And it will require upgrading and improvements to 6 bridges crossing the outlet structure, six bridge crossings, the outlet structure, the west dike, utilities and drainage services. It will also result in recreational and economic development opportunities. So the whole project is being undertaken by the Manitoba Floodway Authority. There's a specific act that outlines their responsibilities. They're separate, independent, publicly accountable. They're a provincial agency that will manage the expansion and maintenance of the Red River Floodway on behalf of all Manitobans. They own the physical assets, they manage the design and the construction and the maintenance, and they develop the economic opportunities resulting from the project. And they do this in consultation with the surrounding RMs, or rural municipalities. And there's just some photos I have of the excavation and some of the associated infrastructure improvements. So, in terms of the consultation that have occurred around the floodway, there are 4 rounds of consultation held, 3 prior to the filing of our environmental impact statement, and further consultation once the Environment Act license was granted. The consultation is ongoing and it involves both citizens as well as rural municipalities. And there are standing committees, including the Public Liaison Committee, that meets frequently to discuss issues of construction as the project moves forward. There's also a specific recreation working committee that looks at potential recreation opportunities associated with the project. The mandate of the Floodway Authority isn't heavily geared toward the recreation aspect, but they're finding that there's more and more work going on as the surrounding municipalities realize that there are recreation co-benefits as well as economic development opportunities. Other targeted groups for consultation include Aboriginal communities, residents impacted by bridge construction, contractors and unions. And there's continual outreach on the projects through newsletters, public information booths, etc. There are also programs associated with the project, such as the groundwater response line. So if you feel there could be potential groundwater issues emerging, such as contamination or the groundwater, the aquifers being drawn down, there's a 24-hour response line you can go. And there's the Access to Earth program, which is a great one. So if you do need fill for any project in your home, we've got a lot. And there's a number you can call and get some. They're also using it for other projects related to flood protection on private property, as well as landfill decommissioning. So they're using it to cap landfill. Pardon me?
Related to BC.
There's a climate change strategy. In terms of key lessons learned, early and continual public involvement as well as continual involvement of the rural municipalities is critical. The single largest design change that resulted in the project resulted from public input, and that was essentially the original design called to deepen the channel by 6 feet, but there were some very serious concerns about how that would affect the aquifer. So instead, the channel is actually being widened, not deepened. And of course, that has a ripple effect. It means you're having to build your bridges, realign them differently, and they have all the infrastructure associated with that change were significant. So the sooner you can get that input and integrate it, certainly the better. The consultation, again, it's sustained throughout the construction, and it allows for ongoing flexibility in the design. And I alluded to the recreation aspect. And originally, our municipalities surrounding the project weren't too keen on any kind of recreation being linked into the project. Primarily, they felt it would probably be a draw on their emergency response capacity if there were all sorts of snowmobiling accidents and other issues emerging. But as the projects progress, they've realized that there are development opportunities that they're going to seek, and so the design has been changed accordingly as they've come forward with their ideas. And then also limitations have to be clearly articulated to stakeholders, because ultimately there are a lot of demands, I think, placed on people people, the RMs understand that this is a major capital project and that it could potentially lead to other improvements within their municipalities. But often it could potentially detract from the fact that we have to build a bigger ditch. And sometimes that's the bottom line, and you might not always get what you want as a municipality. Now, just slightly still on the topic of water, but I'm going to look also at integrated watershed management planning. We have a Department of Water Stewardship in the provincial government, and as much as a floodway project is certainly a response to adaptation, it's not one that's always touted as such. But integrated watershed management planning is out of water stewardship. It is a program that is on the ground and running it, and the department has always considered it an adaptive response. So I'm just going to finish with a few slides on what they're doing. So in terms of water management, it's centralized. There's a centralized mandate for water within one department, that's water stewardship. There's a water strategy based on IWMP and consolidation of water legislation and water policy. It's a shared partnership between the province and municipalities through our conservation districts. So currently 7 of our 35 conservation districts have IWMPs in place, and the goal of the department is to complete 5 per year. So in terms of water policy and adaptation, communities and ecosystems are vulnerable to climate change. If they're in poor health, then they're slow to change to adapt. The best way to reduce vulnerability is by increasing adaptive capacity, thereby increasing resilience within the system. Resilience at the watershed and the local community level is provided by a healthy aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. It's informed and appropriate human action and robust policy and planning tools. And these are this is the policy framework that generally water stewardship works under. So it's a process to facilitate understanding of human impacts on the watershed, outline a land use watershed decision-making framework, and ensure that water and land use management are integrated. It helps to target limited resources. It's based on watershed boundaries, not necessarily conservation district boundaries. And the plans involve watershed residents and stakeholder agencies. The purpose is to focus programming, to build multi-organizational and agency connections to meet watershed targets, and better understand watershed health and community priorities. So it provides an integrated context for drainage, irrigation, and water allocation decisions. It identifies and supports practices to counteract impacts of drought and variable water supplies, such as community water conservation programs, tillage practices, snow management, grass waterways, windbreaks, and preservation and restoration of wetlands. So it makes climate change adaptation strategies explicit rather than implicit. In terms of the key lessons that they've learned through this process, shared governance is more effective than a top-down approach. Local communities become water planning authorities through MOUs. Priority setting is led by the local community, and it's followed by, after the priorities are set, then the data is generally collected and analyzed, and any gaps at that point in time are identified. Build partnerships to leverage support and address those gaps. So there are partnerships that are established with the PFRA and other provincial departments such as conservation, agriculture, intergovernment affairs, as well as fisheries and oceans, and wherever possible, pool of resources. Initiatives are volunteer-driven, and the greatest challenge tends to be community capacity, as well as the gaps in data that we had sort of discussed earlier today. Again, the process depends heavily on local knowledge and local volunteer support within communities. And those communities generally are quite stretched. The last lesson, in terms of networks, generally at the end of the process, networks emerge that may help to address adaptation and other aspects such as emergency preparedness and other responses. So those are the two programs I wanted to discuss, both related to water. And welcome to come. Municipalities.